Hey guys, it's the Pig King here. Wow. Crazy to think that we are now a decade into the Monsterverse now. And in that time, we've gotten classic Toho monsters finally making their Western debut, the rematch between Godzilla and Kong, and a few TV shows here and there. And that's only on the American side. Like, not to mention everything that's been going on in Japan ever since then, ever since the Reiwa era began. It's crazy to think that in 10 years, we've gotten, what, 5 movies from the Monsterverse, I believe? Now, that sounds pretty normal if you know anything about movies, but it's so crazy to me that the Monsterverse's like competition, such as Marvel, have had 29 movies alone since 2014, not including shows. And the Monsterverse, despite the amount of like quantity being much lesser than the MCU, it still has managed to be the most successful cinematic universe outside of it. But how did this universe become the one of the rare few to survive? Well, to do that, we got to travel back 10 years ago. 10 years to 2014. Now, this right here is cinema. Now, for those of you who may not know, Godzilla 2014 was my first introduction to the G-Man. I know I can recall seeing Godzilla on the poster and just going, I want to watch that. So yeah, this movie kind of is special to me. It's the movie that made me a Godzilla fan. I was like 8 when I first watched it, and 10 years later, I'm still just as big as a kaiju fan as I was back then. And I know a lot of you guys have the same thing as me. This was your first Godzilla movie. So to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of not only Godzilla 2014, but the whole Monsterverse in general, let's take a look back at the small movie that ended up starting a whole era of kaiju films. Now, one thing that we have to start this with is how it got made. Godzilla has been trying to make it into the States in a big way for a long time now. And if you know Godzilla, then you know this story started ever since the 80s. Yeah, ever since the 80s, Toho have been trying to get Godzilla to successfully come to America. Eventually, it landed in the hands of Legendary Studios, who have proven themselves to already be a good choice for their film the year before it, Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim being an absolute gorgeous mix between classic Japanese kaiju and modern day mechas. So it seemed that this movie would be in great hands for this. And when the movie released in May of 2014, what did people think? Well, it was good, but not great. That was the common consensus among audiences, with people loving the performance by Bryan Cranston, the way they were able to make these titans feel gigantic and true forces of nature, and of course, people adored Godzilla himself, with him being a great blend between familiar and realistic, with an awesome roar that legit made people have to call the police, it was that loud. No, this is not a joke, by the way, look it up, it actually did happen. But among all the praise, there was a lot of backlash, specifically at the monsters. There were a lot of criticism with other things as well, such as the humans being boring and the only good one being killed off, but the main issues came from the kaiju, with everyone feeling disappointed that for a movie called Godzilla, it had very little Godzilla in it. So overall, reactions were mixed. People loved the fact that we finally got a faithful American Godzilla movie, but felt like we wanted a bit more. What did I think? Well, after rewatching it 10 years later, I can see what people mean. I, for one, despite my nostalgia, just did not find the humans interesting at all. Funny enough, I've come to appreciate Bryan Cranston's character a lot more as I got older from when I initially did as 8 years old, and agree with everyone that he should have been the lead, not Brody. Plus, a big issue I have with this movie, even as a kid, is that it's way too dark, man. It's so hard to see what's going on unless you're watching in like a dark cavern or something. You're pretty much screwed if you want to see any action at all. You know it's so bad that YouTube videos during that time had to be labeled brightened in order for people to actually see what was going on. It was that bad. One thing I found interesting though was the lack of monsters on screen. On one hand, it helps build suspense and makes every moment they are on screen feel big and important, but they just tease us too much, man, with them. It starts to just feel rather frustrating than exciting. One big reason for this I've seen from behind the scenes was they wanted to do something akin to Jaws, with them holding the creatures back to help build suspense, but the reason Jaws worked and Godzilla doesn't is because Jaws had an interesting and fun group of characters that we could watch. But here, they're just not interesting, and so we're not as engaged while we're waiting for the big monsters. The funny thing is, they almost had someone like that, someone who was really interesting to watch, but then again, they just killed him off, so couldn't really leave that much of an impact. So yeah, no amount of rose-tinted glasses is going to keep me from seeing these flaws, but just like clockwork, there's always a lot of stuff in this movie to appreciate. The tone, the scale, and the way that these monsters are filmed, it's truly a spectacle, with the Halo jump being a true standout. And hey, do you guys remember the mobile game that was released during this time? Yeah, it was something like with a soldier that you had to drop from the Halo, go into the city and save people while Godzilla was destroying the city. I remember having a lot of good memories on that game. It was so much fun. And I kind of wish that the movie was about that. After all, imagine how cool it would have been to watch a soldier try to save people in a city being attacked by a kaiju for an hour and a half. That is pure awesome. So yeah, for me this movie is a very 50-50. There's a lot to love here, but equally there's a lot to hate as well. But one thing we all cannot deny is the impact this movie left. This movie managed to popularize kaiju again. If stuff like Cloverfield and Pacific Rim were the starters, then Godzilla 2014 was the main course. This movie managed to not only bring Godzilla back, but Kong and other Toho monsters on the big screen again. It's this movie that we now have the masterpieces in Shin Godzilla and -1, and the fun Showa-like rides in Godzilla King of the Monsters, GVK, and GXK. So to me, it doesn't really matter whether you like this movie or not. We all should be grateful for it, because it's made a lot of new fans and helped to revitalize the kaiju genre as a whole. So to me, I'm always going to have a soft spot for this movie, because despite it not being the best, just like Godzilla himself, it managed to remind everyone who's the king. But what did you guys think of this movie? Did you like it? Or have you got mixed feelings about it? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you guys want more videos just like this, then be sure to subscribe. I've got a goal to reach 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I know that with your help, I can definitely reach that goal. So if you want more videos just like this, then please subscribe. And with that, I will see you all next time.